The Grand Assembly Hall of Valtrexia Prime was a marvel of engineering, an architectural wonder that symbolized the unity of hundreds of species. Towering pillars of translucent crystal refracted light across the chamber, casting shifting hues of gold, blue, and violet. Delegates from across the galaxy sat in their designated sections, murmuring among themselves as the session began. At the center of the room, the Supreme Chancellor of the Assembly, a towering, avian-like figure of the Voran species, struck the ceremonial staff against the floor. The resulting chimes silenced the gathering. We convene today to address the escalating hostilities between the Xilari Dominion and the Uvran Consortium, the Chancellor announced, his voice resonating through unseen amplifiers. Despite repeated negotiations, tensions have only worsened. The Assembly must act before open war consumes our galaxy. Murmurs of discontent rippled through the hall. The Xilari, a reptilian species with sleek, obsidian-colored scales, sat on one side of the chamber, their delegation exuding quiet arrogance. On the opposite end, the Uvran, their massive cephalopod-like forms pulsing with shifting bioluminescence, responded with disdainful flickers of color. Between these titans of power sat the humans, a small delegation in comparison, yet composed and unshaken. Ambassador Evelyn Carter, humanity's representative, listened carefully. She knew how the Assembly saw her kind. Humanity was young, barely 3 centuries into interstellar diplomacy. They had no empire, no great fleets, no war machine to back their words. At least, that was what the galaxy believed. A Xilari representative stood, his slit pupil eyes gleaming. The Uvran have committed an act of war, he hissed. They have invaded our border colony, massacred civilians, and razed the settlements. And yet the Assembly still hesitates. The Uvran delegate, his voice a deep, bubbling echo, responded. The Dominion encroached on what was rightfully ours. We merely reclaimed what had been stolen. The chamber erupted into chaos. Accusations, counter-accusations, and thinly veiled threats filled the air. Many smaller factions sat in uneasy silence, unwilling to anger either superpower. No one wanted war, yet no one dared to intervene. Evelyn Carter stood. The humans had remained quiet long enough. Honored delegates, she said, her voice firm but measured. War benefits no one, but we cannot ignore the lives at stake. If the Assembly refuses to act, humanity offers an alternative. The murmurs quieted. Some looked at her with curiosity, others with mild amusement. What could the humans possibly contribute? She continued, we propose a neutral rescue operation. A single vessel, no weapons, no military presence, only a mission to extract survivors from the ruins. This act does not favor one side over the other, and it does not provoke war. If the Assembly truly values peace, it will not stand in the way of humanitarian aid. The silence was telling. The proposal was reasonable, but beneath the surface, there was skepticism. The Uvran saw no threat in a human vessel. The Xilari, desperate to recover their civilians, nodded reluctantly. The Supreme Chancellor exhaled. The Assembly will not oppose this action. But let it be known, this is not an endorsement of human intervention beyond rescue. Evelyn nodded. Understood. The decision was made. As the session adjourned, Evelyn activated a secure communicator on her wrist. The message was brief. Mission approved. Deploy the Obsidian. Far away, in the depths of space, a ship stirred. The HSS Obsidian drifted silently in the void, a sleek vessel wrapped in darkness, its form blending seamlessly with the starlit abyss. To any observer, it was indistinguishable from a standard deep space survey ship. Unarmed, lightly armored, purely designed for exploration. Its hull bore no obvious weapon ports, no aggressive markings. By all appearances, it was a civilian vessel. But appearances could be deceiving. On the bridge, Captain Elias Mercer stood at the central console, his hands clasped behind his back as he observed the final mission preparations. The dim glow of holographic displays flickered across his sharp features, highlighting the calm intensity in his eyes. Around him, his officers moved with quiet efficiency, each one trained to handle the ship's true nature, a secret that only a handful outside of humanity's highest command knew. Mission parameters confirmed. Lieutenant Aiko Tanaka reported from the operations console. We are to enter the Uvran-occupied system, extract all surviving civilians, and return without direct engagement. There was a pause. Then Commander Ryland Voss, the ship's tactical officer, let out a small, humorless chuckle. Without engagement. That's optimistic. Mercer exhaled slowly. The assembly thinks we're sending a simple rescue ship. Voss smirked. They have no idea. The truth was, the Obsidian was not a survey vessel. It was a warship, humanity's first true attempt at military supremacy in space. For decades, the great galactic powers had dismissed humanity as a species of traders, diplomats, and explorers, while the Xilari, the Uvran, and the other major empires waged their wars. Humanity had remained neutral, playing the role of the harmless newcomer. But neutrality was not the same as weakness. Hidden in deep space research facilities, human scientists and engineers had worked tirelessly to develop something new, something that could ensure their survival in a galaxy ruled by strength. The Obsidian was the result. Its smooth hull was lined with adaptive plating, capable of shifting its appearance to fool enemy sensors. Beneath its exterior lay a reinforced frame designed to absorb kinetic and energy-based impacts. Traditional shielding was only part of its defense. The ship also carried an experimental phase-shifting system, allowing it to partially desynchronize from conventional detection grids. And then there were its weapons. No visible gun ports, no protruding turrets, just a seemingly smooth, featureless hull. But within its structure were concealed missile silos, rapid deployment railguns, and a next-generation electronic warfare suite capable of turning enemy targeting systems into scrambled chaos. To the galaxy, humanity had no warships. In reality, the Obsidian was their first step into a new era. Aiko glanced at her console. Jump drive ready. Coordinates locked. We'll arrive at the colony in 15 minutes. Mercer turned toward the crew. Final system check. Once we arrive, we operate under complete stealth. No transmissions, no unnecessary power fluctuations. We get in, extract the civilians, and leave before they even know we're there. Voss leaned forward. And if they do notice? Mercer's expression was unreadable. Then we show them what they've never seen before. With a subtle hum, the Obsidian vanished into faster-than-light travel, a ghost moving through the void, unseen and unstoppable. The HSS Obsidian emerged from faster-than-light travel on the outskirts of the Xilari colony system. The transition was smooth, silent, without any of the disruptive energy flares that accompanied standard ship arrivals. To outside sensors, there was no arrival at all. The Obsidian simply appeared, slipping into reality like a shadow cast across the void. On the bridge, Captain Mercer watched the holographic display as the ship's advanced scanning systems painted a grim picture. The once thriving Xilari colony was now a wasteland. The planetary surface flickered with the residual heat signatures of recent bombardment. Entire cities reduced to smoldering rubble. Fires burned in the atmosphere, fed by the wreckage of fallen ships and collapsing infrastructure. The Ivran fleet still lingered in orbit, their massive, cephalopod-like warships hanging above the ruined world like carrion feeders over a corpse. A dozen heavy cruisers formed the bulk of their force, flanked by agile raiders and drone swarms that patrolled the system like a living net. Lieutenant Tanaka scanned the area. Multiple life signs detected on the surface. Xilari survivors are scattered across the ruins. Estimated 300 still alive. Commander Voss folded his arms. Extraction's going to be tricky with all those warships hovering above. Mercer's gaze remained locked on the enemy fleet. Then we'll need to be ghosts. Silent infiltration. The Obsidian descended toward the planet, its advanced stealth systems in full effect. Unlike conventional warships, which relied on brute force shielding or cloaking devices prone to power fluctuations, the Obsidian functioned on an entirely different level. It did not avoid detection. It made itself unworthy of notice. A passive distortion field redirected enemy scanners, making the ship appear as little more than drifting debris. Its hull absorbed radiation instead of reflecting it. Heat emissions were vented in microscopic bursts along calculated intervals, matching the background noise of space itself. It was invisible without ever disappearing. Approaching surface, Tanaka reported. Landing zone identified. An underground transit hub mostly intact beneath the ruins. It should shield us from orbital scans. Mercer nodded. Deploy recovery teams. We keep this quiet. The first kill. As the ship settled within the wreckage of the city, the crew worked swiftly. Covert dropships, their profiles masked, fanned out to locate survivors. Medical officers administered aid while security teams maintained a tight perimeter. But stealth could only last so long. One of the Wyvern patrol ships, a sleek hunter-killer frigate, adjusted its course. Its deep space sensors, crude compared to the Obsidians, still registered something unusual. A distortion, a flicker of movement where there should be none. It drifted closer. On the Obsidian's bridge, an alert flashed red. "We've got a problem," Voss muttered. "Wyvern scout ship. It's getting suspicious." Mercer's expression remained calm. "Options. We could jam them," Tanaka suggested. "But if they realize it's active interference, they'll sound the alarm." Voss leaned forward. "Or we take it out before it gets the chance." A silence settled over the bridge. The assembly had permitted a rescue mission, nothing more. But if the Wyvern discovered the Obsidian, the entire mission would be compromised. Worse, the assembly would know the truth about humanity's secret fleet. Mercer didn't hesitate. Engage. The Obsidian's hull barely seemed to shift, but beneath its surface, hidden weapon ports activated. A single railgun adjusted its angle by mere degrees, calculating the perfect firing solution. No excess movement. No energy spike. The shot fired. It was silent. A tungsten slug, moving at hypersonic velocity, left the Obsidian and crossed the void in an instant. It struck the Wyvern ship dead center. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the scout ship folded in on itself, its central mass imploding before its exterior shredded apart from sheer kinetic force. There was no explosion, no flare of energy. Just a cloud of debris, indistinguishable from the wreckage already littering the battlefield. Voss exhaled. One shot, one kill. Mercer's eyes remained on the display. The rest of the Wyvern fleet hadn't noticed. "Continue the operation," he said. "We're not done yet." The ghost in the war zone. With the scout ship gone, the Obsidian resumed its silent work. Survivors were extracted, loaded into hidden compartments designed for deep space evacuation. The dropships moved with precision, their thrusters synchronized to eliminate unnecessary signatures. And yet, as efficient as they were, time was not on their side. The enemy fleet was repositioning. A Wyvern cruiser began a slow orbit over the ruins, its scanners sweeping wide. Tanaka's voice was tight. "We have 15 minutes before we're in their sensor arc." Mercer's fingers curled into a fist. He had no intention of leaving without every last survivor. "Then we finish this in 10. The race against time had begun. The rescue teams moved with ruthless efficiency, guiding Silari civilians into the Obsidian's concealed hangars. The evacuees, injured, starving, their scales dulled from exhaustion, stared wide-eyed at the humans. To them, humans were traitors, diplomats, nothing more. Yet here they were, risking everything for a species that had never considered them equals. Time was slipping away. On the Obsidian's bridge, Captain Mercer tracked the enemy fleet. The Wyvern cruiser continued its slow orbit, its massive sensor arrays sweeping the ruins below. If it detected anything unusual, a full fleet response would follow. Tanaka's voice was tight. 7 minutes before we enter their scan radius. The last of the survivors were aboard, but their presence introduced a new problem: biological signatures. While the Obsidian could mask its own emissions, it wasn't designed to hide hundreds of non-human life forms. Voss turned from his console. "We need to leave. Now." Mercer's jaw clenched. He had two options: retreat under stealth and pray their jamming held, or go loud and ensure their escape by force. The first was safer. The second was a declaration of war. The decision was made for him. Detection. An alert flashed red. A wave-ran drone ship had altered course. Unlike manned vessels, drones didn't rely on organic reflexes or instinct. They followed patterns, numbers, logic, and the logic was simple. Something didn't add up. The drone scanned the area. A pulse of energy rippled outward, a subsonic ping meant to measure atmospheric distortions. It passed harmlessly through rubble, but when it reached the transit hub where the Obsidian lay hidden, the reading came back wrong. For the Wyvern, it was anomalous data, just enough to warrant investigation. Then the drone adjusted course. The first engagement. "Enemy drone closing," Tanaka reported. "It's running an active scan." Voss cursed. "They know we're here." Mercer didn't hesitate. "Take it down." The Obsidian's concealed point defense railgun rotated by mere degrees. The weapon, designed for anti-fighter operations, needed no energy signature, just pure kinetic force. The silent slug fired, and a moment later, the drone ship ceased to exist. 1 second. No alarm. No trace. But it was too late. Before the drone died, it transmitted a final burst of data. The anomaly was confirmed. And the Wyvern fleet responded. Battle begins. Across the void, enemy warships shifted formation. The cruiser in high orbit adjusted its scan patterns. 2 frigates altered course, heading straight for the surface. Further out, the larger warships, dreadnoughts, their armored hulls bristling with firepower, prepared for engagement. Tanaka's voice was sharp. "We just lost stealth. They know something's here." Mercer's hands tightened. "Then it's time we introduce ourselves." The Obsidian came to life. Power surged through its hidden weapons. Missile ports slid open, railguns adjusted their trajectories, and the ship's electronic warfare suite activated in full force. A Wyvern frigate descended into the atmosphere, its weapons charging. The pilot had no idea what was waiting for him. The Obsidian fired first. A hypersonic projectile, invisible to the naked eye, slammed into the frigate's engines. The ship didn't explode. It collapsed, its entire propulsion system obliterated in an instant. The remaining structure spun out of control, slamming into the ruined city below with a fireless, shattering impact. 1 down. The second frigate tried to pull away, but the Obsidian was already ahead. A barrage of smart missiles, disguised as debris, suddenly ignited and locked onto their target. The frigate's point defense systems fired, but it was too slow, too predictable. 5 impacts. A chain reaction. The frigate ruptured from within. 2 down. The cruiser in high orbit reacted. It adjusted its firing arc, preparing to unleash a full spread of plasma cannons toward the surface. 1 shot could erase the Obsidian if it connected. Mercer's voice was cold. "Disrupt them." The Obsidian's electronic warfare array pulsed outward. For the Wyvern commander, reality collapsed. His sensors blinked to static. His targeting systems scrambled. The once clear battlefield became an abyss of false readings and phantom ships. Every system on his bridge screamed contradictions. Then, through the chaos, came the first real warning. Something was moving toward them. A message written in fire. The Obsidian ascended from the ruins, moving like a phantom through the battlefield. Its dark hull reflected no light, its engines leaving no trace, only the results of its destruction. The Wyvern fleet hesitated. A single human vessel had just erased 2 warships in under 30 seconds. And now, it was coming for them. Mercer activated the comms. His voice, calm and measured, echoed across the enemy channels. "You have one chance. Leave now." For the first time in recorded history, the Wyvern hesitated. The galaxy was beginning to learn a truth it had long ignored. Humanity was not weak. They had simply been waiting. And now, the universe would see why. The Wyvern fleet hung in the void, their warships adjusting formation, unsure whether to advance or retreat. Moments ago, they had been the undisputed masters of this battlefield. Now they faced something they did not understand, something that had killed without warning, without effort. On the Obsidian's bridge, Mercer watched the enemy hesitation with calculated patience. The entire mission had changed. This was no longer a simple rescue operation. This was a test, the first real test of humanity's hidden strength. Tanaka's voice broke the silence. "Their lead dreadnought is hailing us." Mercer nodded. "Put it through." The holographic display flickered, revealing a towering Yvran commander. His body was wrapped in the organic armor of his species, his scaled tendrils shifting in agitation. Behind him, his bridge crew moved with the careful precision of warriors who suddenly realized they had underestimated their opponent. "Identify yourself," the Yvran snarled, his voice a guttural growl. "This system belongs to the Yvran Dominion. You are trespassing." Mercer met his gaze without emotion. "We were retrieving civilians from the destruction your fleet caused." His tone was steady, unshaken. "You fired first." The Yvran's slitted eyes narrowed. "One vessel cannot stand against a Dominion fleet." "You just lost 2 ships in under a minute," Mercer replied, voice cold. "How many more do you want to lose?" Silence stretched between them. The commander's tendrils twitched, a sign of barely contained rage. Yvran's strategy relied on overwhelming force, on fear. Yet fear had just changed sides. Tanaka leaned in, muting the transmission. "They're stalling. Their battle formations are shifting. Slowly, carefully. They're waiting for reinforcements." Mercer considered the odds. The Obsidian was powerful, but it wasn't invincible. In a prolonged fight against an entire fleet, even its advanced systems would be overwhelmed. They had one chance to dictate the terms of this encounter. He made his decision. "Target their lead dreadnought," he said calmly. "Non-lethal strike. We send a message." Voss grinned, sending it loud and clear. One shot, one warning. From the Obsidian's dark hull, a single projectile launched. No energy surge, no warning, just a pure kinetic slug, moving so fast it bent the very air around it. The Yvran dreadnought's shields were powerful, designed to withstand plasma bombardments and high-yield torpedoes. But they weren't designed for this. The slug punched through their forward deflector array like paper. It did not explode, because it did not need to. The sheer force of impact ripped through the dreadnought's armor, traveling deep into its hull before exiting through the other side in a spray of molten metal. The ship shuddered, power flickering. The entire bridge of the Yvran commander shook with the force of the impact. Alarms blared. On the Obsidian's bridge, Tanaka read the data. Direct hit. We disabled their primary weapon arrays. No fatalities. The Yvran commander's expression twisted into something between shock and fury. Mercer leaned forward, speaking into the transmission once more. "Leave." The Yvran commander did not answer. But across the battlefield, the Dominion fleet halted its advance. Whispers of uncertainty rippled through their ranks. For the first time in their history, they had been outmatched by a single human warship. The retreat seconds stretched into minutes. Then, the Yvran fleet began to withdraw. Not in panic, not in fear, but in careful, measured retreat. They would not forget this. As the last of their warships slipped into faster-than-light travel, Voss let out a slow breath. "They're going to report this to their high command." Mercer nodded. "Good. Because this was only the beginning." The Obsidian remained motionless in the void, a silent predator watching its retreating prey. The Yvran fleet had withdrawn, but their departure was not an admission of defeat. It was a recalibration. an acknowledgement that they had encountered something outside their expectations. They would return, and next time, they would not hesitate. On the bridge, the tension remained thick. No one celebrated. Voss stared at the holographic display, arms crossed. "They won't let this go," he muttered. "The Dominion doesn't forget humiliation." Tanaka exhaled. "They're probably already sending reports to their high command, analyzing the attack, the ship's capabilities." Mercer didn't look away from the viewport. The truth was, humanity's secret was no longer completely hidden. The Obsidian's existence had been exposed, if only to a select few in the Ivran military. But that was enough. He turned to the crew. "Damage report." Tanaka scanned the readouts. "No structural damage. Stealth systems are intact. We remain undetected by the wider galactic network." Voss leaned on his console. "But we can't stay here. The moment the Dominion decides to retaliate, they won't just send a fleet. They'll send an armada." Mercer nodded. "We've done what we came here to do. Plot a course. We leave in 5. In the hangar, medical teams continued tending to the auxiliary survivors. Their eyes, large, reptilian, filled with exhaustion, watched the humans with wary curiosity. One of the auxiliary elders, her frilled crest tattered and scorched, stepped forward. Her voice, though weak, carried an edge of disbelief. You are human." Lieutenant Shaw, one of the medical officers, glanced at her. "That's right." The elder's throat pulsed. "Why would your kind risk your lives for us?" The Galactic Assembly did nothing. The other species refused to intervene. "Why would you?" Shaw didn't answer at first. She just looked at the injured, at the wreckage of a civilization that had been deemed unworthy of saving by the rest of the galaxy. Finally, she said, "Because we could." The elder studied her, as if searching for deception. But there was none. Meanwhile, back on the bridge, Tanaka's console beeped. "Incoming transmission." Mercer turned. "Ivran." Tanaka shook her head. "No, this one's from the Galactic Assembly." Voss frowned. They must have picked up on the battle. Someone was watching. Mercer calmed his breathing. This was expected. The Assembly would want answers. They would demand to know what had just happened. Tanaka glanced at him. "Do we respond?" Mercer didn't hesitate. "Patch it through." The holographic display flickered, revealing a figure draped in the ceremonial robes of an Assembly envoy. Their expression was unreadable, but their tone was not. "Captain Mercer, the Assembly requires an immediate explanation for your actions." The trap had been set. Now, humanity would see if the galaxy was ready for the truth. The transmission hung in the air, the Assembly envoy staring through the holographic display with barely restrained urgency. Behind them, the towering spires of the Assembly Hall loomed, an ivory sanctuary where wars were debated but never fought. Their voice, though calm, carried an unmistakable weight. "Captain Mercer, you have violated the Assembly's non-intervention charter. Your presence in this conflict was unauthorized." On the Obsidian's bridge, the crew exchanged glances. Tanaka muttered under her breath. "They don't waste time, do they?" Mercer remained impassive. "We were retrieving survivors, nothing more." The envoy's eyes narrowed. 2 Ivran warships were destroyed in the process. Voss scoffed. "They fired first." The envoy ignored him. "The Dominion has already lodged a formal protest. They claim your actions were an act of aggression, an unprovoked attack against their rightful authority." Mercer's jaw tightened. Rightful authority. They butchered an entire planet's population. The envoy barely blinked. "The Assembly is aware of the Dominion's actions. Then why didn't you stop them?" Mercer's voice was quiet, but there was an edge to it, a barely contained fury. The envoy hesitated. For the first time, there was something almost human in their expression. Shame, perhaps, or something close to it. But it was gone as quickly as it came. The Assembly cannot act against the Dominion without undeniable proof of war crimes. Tanaka exhaled sharply. The ruins of an entire civilization aren't proof enough. The envoy remains still. The assembly maintains neutrality in all conflicts. That is the foundation of peace. Mercer leaned forward. Peace for who? A pause. Then the envoy straightened. Regardless, your actions have placed humanity in a precarious position. The Dominion will retaliate. They will demand answers. And when they do, the Assembly will not protect you. Mercenaries didn't waver. We never needed your protection. The silence stretched between them. Then, without another word, the envoy ended the transmission. The display flickered and vanished, leaving only the steady hum of the bridge. Tanaka shook her head. That went well. Voss crossed his arms. The Assembly will pretend they had nothing to do with this, but they're rattled. They know what we just proved. Mercer exhaled. They know we're not weak. But strength had a cost. The Dominion would not let this insult stand. War was coming. The only question was when. The obsidian moved through the void like a ghost, silent and unseen. The battle was over, but the consequences were only beginning. In the hangars below, the rescued Xilari civilians huddled together, their expressions a mixture of exhaustion and disbelief. For them, the nightmare had not yet ended. Their home was gone. Their people were scattered. And the galaxy had already moved on. On the bridge, the atmosphere was tense. The crew had no illusions about what would happen next. Tanaka broke the silence. Long-range scans just picked up a shift in Dominion fleet movements. They're regrouping. Voss grunted. They didn't run. They're just repositioning. Mercer's expression was unreadable. They won't attack right away. They'll wait. Assess. Find a weakness. Tanaka tapped her console. We won't give them one. We're plotting our exit now. The Obsidian's stealth systems were still holding. Their presence in the system had already become a whispered myth among Assembly analysts. Some would believe the Uvran reports. Others would dismiss them as exaggeration. But one truth remained. Humanity had revealed a fraction of its strength, and the galaxy had noticed. As the ship prepared for departure, a soft chime indicated an incoming internal transmission. Shaw, still in the medical bay, appeared on the comms display. Captain, the Xilari Elder wants to speak with you. Mercer gave a slight nod. I'll be down shortly. In the hangar, the Elder stood apart from her people, watching the humans with an unreadable gaze. When Mercer approached, she lifted her weary eyes to him. We should be dead, she said quietly. The Assembly abandoned us. The Dominion hunted us. Yet you. She trailed off, studying him as if searching for something. Mercer met her gaze. Humanity doesn't stand by and watch. The Elder's frilled crest twitched in what might have been understanding. Then the galaxy does not understand you at all. A flicker of something. Satisfaction, perhaps, crossed Mercer's face. They will soon. The Xilari Elder was silent for a moment. Then she stepped forward and did something unexpected. She placed a hand over her chest and bowed, a gesture of deep respect among her kind. You have given us a future, she said, and when the time comes, we will stand with you. Mercer inclined his head. You won't stand alone. The Obsidian's engines flared as it prepared to jump. The Uvran would return. The Assembly would watch. The galaxy would whisper. But humanity had taken its first step into the darkness, and the stars would never be the same again.